Electricast.
Last week on Ghost Hampton, Matteo can see Lyle plans arson and suicide and demands he cease. Matteo agrees to help the barn collapse, but Lyle raises his pistol to his mouth. The barn's demon jumps to Matteo and Lyle fights the possessed priest in the burning barn. Matteo strangles Lyle amid roaring flames, commanding he worship the devil, until Lyle punches Matteo hard and he goes down.
Interior, Old Vic's barn, night, continuous. Lyle opens his hand and shakes it in the acrid air. He broke bones. Now nothing works. But his demonic pains suddenly cease. So that's an improvement. And he's sobering up. Then a large section of the centuries-old roof dislodges and collapses loudly in flames right next to him. He notes the body in front of him really is Father Matteo's. The other thing was just visiting. And the smoldering ember on his shoulder really is burning. It's Lyle's duty now to get the priest out. But how? Lyle's legs don't really work and both hands are injured. Suddenly there's a savage, high-pitched screech. Lyle looks toward the wall of flame that's grown to his right as the possum returns, launching itself through the blazes right at him in his wheelchair. It's like a furry fireball with teeth. All Lyle can think to do is raise his right elbow just in time, at just the right angle, and ram the disgusting thing in the face. There's one last screech as the possum falls backward into the growing flames. Lyle gets some satisfaction seeing its horrid little feet squirm until they stop. Then the stench of roast possum envelops him and flames creep ever closer. Lyle has to try to get Matteo out of this barn. His left hand is less injured than his broken right. Lyle tries backpedaling the chair a bit, then hooking his left hand under Matteo's armpit and dragging his dead weight a little. Then the chair again, then Matteo. Of course, this cannot work. Lyle's paws sweat profusely, releasing alcohol. That's good. But his heart is fluttering. Gasping for air, he gets only a lungful of blistering smoke. The fire he started wants more dry wood, and it spreads hungrily upward, engulfing the remaining roof overhead, crackling as the structure groans. Then Lyle vomits. It all comes up, a volcanic quart of scotch mixed with acidic bile, hits his legs and even splashes onto poor Matteo's cassock. It dawns on him that he really is trying to live. Save Matteo from the hellhole, even save himself too. And Georgie? What if everything a demon says really is a lie? What if she's still alive? What if he can make amends for real? Lyle tries to imagine such an existence as he passes out in the middle of reaching for Matteo's vomit-splashed armpit. The last thing he hears is the banshee, screaming, coming to take him away. There's a monster coming. It's big and has one shining eye atop a giant head. It's trudging toward Lyle and the burning man at his feet. It seems to recognize Lyle, and it stops.
Hey! Hey, Kronk! Over here!
Exterior Old Vic's barn moments later. For a dead guy, Lyle has lots of feelings. Just like the demon said, he'd be in a world of pain. Lyle can smell his bitter buff, an unexpected hellish detail. His head feels like those cinder blocks are back, bashing together between his temples. Knitting his brow, he just hopes. No, he prays. Can you pray in hell? That Georgie is not here, and Matteo too. Cracking one crusty eye, he sees a familiar silhouette. Reminds him of Big Frank, the painfully honest cop he knew.
Is Georgie here?
No, Lyle.
How was Matteo?
Frank nods toward an ambulance. The dark sky is flashing with red and blue lights, and fire trucks and bleating horns.
He's going in that ambulance.
They do not have ambulances in hell. Lyle raises himself on one painful elbow so he can see the whole scene of wreckage. There are fire trucks pelting the old barn with water. The flow is actually making the structure's walls cave in. There are more ambulances pulled up in the weeds, sirens complaining. Fucking old Vic is to his right, still standing. And then there's the gurney bearing Matteo's sherry. As the EMTs jostle it up onto the rear of the ambulance, Matteo's head lolls in Lyle's direction. His eyes are open. The two lock gazes for a second. Everything flows into Lyle's consciousness. Matteo's parents, one dead. His friends, one dead. His career as a priest on Gozo, and the scapegoating accusation meant to save the old man who runs the monastery. The sense Lyle gets is Matteo has nowhere to go in this world. But this world is no longer his problem.
You gonna live?
Can't say, Lyle. He's a real mess.
Frank stares down at Lyle a moment.
I did have a word with Matteo. Told me a bit of what was going on in the barn.
Yeah? What was going on in there?
It was arson, but we knew that. Says he started the fire because the barn was evil.
Place was evil as hell.
So Matteo started the fire?
Oh, don't want to incriminate him.
His jaw's broken. So's your right hand. Have a disagreement?
Man's a saint.
Lyle winces and coughs hard. He's got to ask about Georgie.
Matteo had a message for you.
What message?
Just said, I am good.
Lyle exhales and lays back on his gurney. Suddenly, strong arms are everywhere, hoisting him, gurney and all, into the back of his own ambulance. Inside, everything is bright white, except for one thing. The soot-covered man in a fire suit. His cheeks are black from smoke, but goggles off, he's recognizable. Jimmy Kronk.
Jimmy, what are you doing here?
Making sure you get to the hospital alive.
Why would you risk your life to save me? Everyone thinks I caused your mother's car crash.
'Cause it's my job. And so I can keep suing you.
Lyle laughs the laugh of a condemned man. It degenerates into more coughing as his ambulance starts to wail. It heads out onto Montauk Highway, bound for Southampton Hospital, and he drifts off into a deep sleep. Interior, Gurney's Inn Seagrill, dream sequence. Lyle is in his happy place, Gurney's Seagrill. Sunlight pours through clean windows overlooking a sparkling Atlantic. There's a glass of golden white wine before him, struck by a brilliant shaft of sun. And there's another glass, stemware in a ladylike hand. Flows. She nods to him and smiles.
Yours was my most interesting case.
I try,
You know, your car crash was really a gift.
and it keeps on giving.
Lyle, without your accident, no empathy, no jewel, no haunted house, no Matteo,
And no prostitutes. I could live without empathy.
no Georgie.
Jeez, if you look at it that way.
Flo cracks a big smile. They raise their glasses and clink.
I am deeply sorry you.
Don't be. I'm busier than ever. My question is, how will you put your gift to use? You can't hide it now.
Flo starts shimmering now, as if she's disappearing.
I'll think of something. Hey, Flo, going somewhere?
Next stop, Malta.
Interior, Southampton Hospital ICU, next morning. The hospital room is bright, almost cheery if you like fluorescence. There's even a bouquet of something on the windowsill. Outside, down in the parking lot, news trucks are parked and reporters are drinking coffee. Here lies Lyle Hall. Tubes run every which way into and out of the patient. There are beeps. Momentarily reassuring until a beep turns into a warning buzz. Lyle opens his eyes. A woman in a grey suit stands at his bedside, a blonde.
Dad, how do you feel?
He quotes an old Beatles lyric.
I know what it's like to be dead.
I was so worried for you.
Lyle tries to raise his right hand toward Georgie, but realizes it's broken. The wrist of his left hand, also injured, is attached to tubes.
Don't try to move, Dad.
Thanks for calling me Dad. Does this mean you're undisowning me? I'm repossessed?
Georgie forms a smile balanced with a wince.
Maybe. We'll have to watch your behavior carefully.
Someone's got to do it. How did you do? Last night, I mean.
A few surprises. My surveillance subject started firing at officers.
Oh shit. Everybody okay?
Yeah, except the gunman.
Georgie, I was so worried for you. You know, I was told you'd be killed last night.
You had a lot of people telling you a lot of things, Dad.
But you're okay, right?
Georgie looks around at all the machinery attached to him.
Yeah. I don't have dehydration, smoke inhalation, blood loss, alcohol poisoning, burns, contusions, and a broken hand.
And tubes. Lots of tubes. Georgie, I had a vision about you.
Drug-induced?
Possibly. I was Ebenezer Scrooge.
Ah, the famously stingy misanthrope.
Yes. No. Scrooge on the last page of the story. The generous Scrooge.
Nice. Got a tiny tin?
I got you.
Lyle's eyes, swathed with Vaseline, start to tear up.
Georgie, know your shitty used car?
Vaguely.
I'm buying you a new one. And your college loan? I'm paying that off. Your master's at John Jay, too.
Oh, Dad.
Exactly. I'm doing what a dad does, if he has any money to do it with.
Georgie reaches for Lyle's not-so-injured hand.
Ouch!
Sorry, Dad. Can I give you a kiss?
You are permitted. Forehead only.
Georgie leans down and kisses Lyle's forehead. Twice.
Avoiding the bruises and burns.
Thank you. Seriously. Thank you for everything, Georgie. Like standing up to me. I needed that.
Georgie stands straight. Looking at her dad, there's a rare tear in her eye.
First, one must get your attention.
The door creaks behind her, and a man in uniform enters the room. He has a file folder. Big Frank nods to Georgie.
Hey, Lyle. How are you this morning?
Never better.
Frank's got something for you, Dad.
Handcuffs?
Frank swings the hospital dining table over Lyle's abdomen, placing the file folder open on the table. It's full of photocopies of old news clippings, documents, and photos.
Found this last night.
Lyle can't sift through any of it. Big Frank shows him one photocopy at a time as he and Georgie describe them.
This was stashed in Swanson's locker. Frank photocopied it.
Yeah, well, door was wide open. Internal Affairs stopped by last night for Swanson. I had a theory.
Swanson was padding his hours for retirement while doing chores for Chief Quealy.
I noticed an old file was missing. Under Q. Swanson had it.
One chore was to keep Quealy looking clean and electable while running for county executive.
Turns out an old Quealy forebear actually owned Old Vic when it was new. Old news clippings say Quealy was in business with an Armand Keller, the prostitution business, catering to well-heeled clients.
But people started dying. Eventually, there was a terrible knife fight in the old barn one night in 1888. Armand Keller was killed by his daughter, Carlina.
Frank slips out a photocopy of a crime photo from 1888. Lyle looks at it and gasps. It's Jewel.
Oh my God! It's Jewel!
She got in a bad fight with Keller, who was sampling his employees, and knifed him. He turned the knife on Carlina. She then miscarried.
Carlina's mother was present for the knife fight. We have a long letter she wrote to the police that was never made public. The unborn child was the father's, or in this case, the grandfather's.
The letter says Carlina wanted her baby and wanted to name her Jewel.
This thought goes through Lyle like a shot. Help Jewel. He puts his head back on the pillow, closing his eyes.
Her mom despaired of the police ever coming to investigate this stabbing in the barn. Praying for her daughter's soul and that of little Jewel, she pinned her letter to her skirt. Then she climbed onto a table and hung herself from the big rafter that ran overhead in the old barn.
Lyle sits up and gestures at the photo of Armand Keller.
So why is the dead guy's face wet?
She hung herself right over Keller's body. Often, at the time of death, a body releases any waste.
A few initial stories got out, but Old Man Quealy had the whole atrocity burned.
That's why the whoremonger has a wet face in the crime scene photos.
Like today, in the 1880s, news of this murder-suicide would be so salacious, its ramifications so far-reaching, given Old Vic's upper-crust clientele, that squelching the story was the only solution. Much easier then than now.
Holy shit. And then Old Vic never did sell.
Friends in the precinct house stashed everything they had in an old file cabinet. Buried it.
Until Swanson came along and fished it out to hide it or destroy it.
His boss planning a run for office. There's a lot more, but the detective here doesn't want to stress the patient.
Crap. I should call Noah. Is it okay to tell him stuff?
Georgie and Frank look at each other.
Depends.
We'll have to see. This is all new.
He'll make it boring. That I promise you.
Lyle's phone has been pinging. He finally looks at it. A voicemail from Fraser. He looks up at Georgie.
Go on, Dad. Play it.
Lyle clicks it on.
Dude, you alive? Just saw this on TV news. People are attending Halloween costume parties as Lyle Hall. Believe that shit? Big uptick in wheelchair rentals for the weekend. A medical supply guy says it's unprecedented. The reporter gal says guys only need a dirty pink sweatshirt, a scruffy beard, and a fright wig. Also a red Solo cup. So here's the beauty part. This guy is done up as you, right? And pushing his chair is his date in a Victorian dress. Wild wig, black stuff around her eyes, get it? Lyle, this puts you up there with Frankenstein, Freddy Krueger. Not sure how you capitalize on this, but get a lawyer. I am so glad you're no longer my partner. Gotta run, call me.
All three stare at Lyle's phone aghast. Lyle laughs a little, then a lot. Georgie and Frank join in the laughter. Now a delivery guy comes to Lyle's room with balloons. 24 helium balloons, all with get well wishes, including the unicorn balloons. Georgie signs for it all, and they take over the ceiling, bobbing everywhere. The work of Josie Phillips from Fraser's office. Maybe she's not that pissed that Lyle hasn't answered her messages yet. Behind the balloons, the room's TV's playing silently. Big Frank turns and catches a glimpse of a big earth mover pushing over Old Vic. They all watch in silence as it collapses into splinters. The structure is quickly flattened, except for the old cupola. Somehow, it's still standing. The front loader backhoe approaches, bucket raised, and brings it down hard, crushing the cupola into sticks.
Hi, it's me, Flo. Remember me from Ghost Hampton, the podcast? I was secretly in love with Lyle Hall. Well, now I'm dead and loving it. But let's talk about you. If you loved listening to Ghost Hampton, you can now spend the summer in the Hamptons. The original episodes are back, and now new episodes will be dropping every Friday. I may drop in too, just to make Lyle feel guilty. Ghost Hampton, the podcast, is now streaming everywhere.
Hi, I'm Geraldine Glass, and I'm excited to share a new healing music offering, an extended version song called Joy Reboot, a unique fusion of pop, classic, rap, soundscapes, and funk to inspire collaboration and bring unity through sound. For us, Joy Reboot is music medicine, out now with Electrocast Records.
Electrocast.